Well, Latinos represent almost 19% of the U.S. population. As a group, we contributed $3.2 trillion to the American economy in 2021. If we were a country, we would be the fifth largest economy in the world. That is very, very impressive. Yet Latinos occupy just 4.1% of the Fortune 1000 board seats, and the picture is even worse for film and television, with Latinos accounting only for 3% of the lead actor roles. The challenges are really well documented, and many of you have experienced it, but it's just much deeper than that. The Latino community is diverse within itself. Colombians aren't the same as Mexicans, aren't the same as Brazilians, and for my sake, as a Brazilian, we don't all speak Spanish. Recognizing that this wide range of backgrounds and intersecting identities is really crucial to promote equality and inclusivity. And today, this is what we're here to focus on today. We're going to talk about identity, intersectionality, and allyship. And to start off with, I'd love to hear from the panel, how do you identify yourself? How has that influenced your career? And, what does that bring? What strengths did that bring to your work and your community?
Thank you. Carolina Romero here. I'm so proud to be representing Young Brands today. We have like 10 people here with us. I'm so proud to have you here. Look, I love that we are talking about identity because it's core to intersectionality. So if you ask me today how I identify myself, it's so different than the way I did it 15 years ago, and I'll tell you why. First of all, today I identify as a working mom, that's very important, of 2 boys, an immigrant, not by choice, and also married to a man, a proud Venezuelan, and really, yes, my Venezuelan people here, and who loves Spanish. I love our language. So, but this identity is new because 15 years ago when I was in Venezuela, I belonged to the majority. I was surrounded by people that look like me. And with a privilege, not just from an upper middle class house and home, with a lot of privileges, one of them being that I didn't realize and I didn't have to think about my identity. I was just part of the majority. Once you pass custom and I moved to the US, my identity shifted. And I wasn't ready for that. Really, I'm still unpacking that. What does it mean to be a Latina in the US? But also the perception that people have of me changed, and the way that I react changed as well. So I am learning, but what I learned is that identity is both situational and fluid. And that has opened the door to have a career in the diversity and inclusion space that I didn't know it existed before, and also informs the work that I do day in and day out. That's why understanding our identity is so important.
Wow. Buenas tardes. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. It's a pleasure to be here today with all of you, a real honor. My name is Claudia de Dulac. I am a D&I executive for Bank of America. We also have 10 teammates here representing Bank of America, so very excited to be here. I came here when I was 4 from Colombia, and I feel that I'm very different because of it. My parents were also upper middle class and had a very comfortable life in Colombia, and they came here to give us the hopes and dreams of the land of opportunity. And so for me, I think in my career and in my home life as a mother, I have really worked hard, and I have felt a responsibility to be successful because of everything that my parents gave up for me. And that kept me, straight and narrow. I never got in trouble. I was always the teacher's pet, So I think that has done that. I also think, as far as timing goes, when I came here, it was a long time ago. And so I remember my mother speaking Spanish in the grocery store and me saying, shh, don't let them hear you speaking Spanish. And now I'm a diversity and inclusion executive. So that's quite a journey.
Hello, everybody. Rolando Salinas from NRG. I was thinking many years ago when I was just married. My wife and I went and adopted a dog from the SPCA. And if you've never been to the SPCA, every dog in the SPCA is either a lab mix or a shepherd mix. That's what they tell you. The problem was that Lulu didn't look like either one. So we asked the vet, it's like, hey, what do you think she is? And he was like, he stared at her for a while, and he's like, you know, I think she's a mix of a mix of a mix of a perfect combination. And I think, you know, we're all a little bit like Lulu in that way, right? To your point, Carolina. So, you know, how do I identify myself? Well, right now, in this richly diverse and talented room, I'm a Hispanic professional, right? When I get home later on after my flight, I'll be a bicultural dad raising, you know, 2 boys. And then 2 weeks from now, en Nochebuena, with my primos on my Mexican side, my dad's side, I'll be connecting with my Mexican heritage. And then the very next day on Christmas, with the cousins on my mom's side, I'll be connecting with my, you know, Texan and American heritage. So it's wild, right? I mean, and I think we all kind of experience a little bit of that. But, you know, I think that understanding this malleability, for lack of a better term, right, is really our superpower, right? That's what kind of helps us, you know, navigate through, you know, what can sometimes be a complicated life. I came to this country also, I came for college, and like Patricia mentioned yesterday, I wasn't aware of my ethnicity till I got here, right? You know, and really, it was at some point, you know, in my college career that I remember reading an article about Leonel Sosa and Ernest Bromley and the work that their agency was doing, you know, in the Hispanic community. And that spoke to me somehow. You know, I embraced it. And it wasn't long after that that I got an internship there. And all these years later, I'm still involved in you know, marketing to multicultural audiences. And I think that's part of me too, right? That's part of how I identify as well. So very happy to be here and be a part of this, this learning journey for all of us, right?
Buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están? I have to start by thanking Claudia Romo Edelman and her amazing team for gathering us here in the United Nations. You know where? In the room where it happens. And we are all here. And we're not here by coincidence. So gracias, Claudia, for your leadership. I also want to thank AARP because, like Pepe mentioned yesterday from Walmart, we have to thank our organizations. I thank them for allowing me to be here to represent the hard work and the opportunities such as this one with We Are All Human. It's very important to know where you came from because it keeps you grounded, especially as you climb up that ladder of progress. At a We Are All Human dinner on Tuesday, Dolores Huerta, my shiro, said, "We are all descendants from Africa." And as Tamara said this morning, she said how important it is for us to understand our path, our past. And I wrote her quote down. She said, "Learning is about our history because with knowing our history, we predict our future." So I want to tell you about my ancestry, my ethnicity, mi identidad, as I found it on Ancestry.com. I am Yvette Peña. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. I am a proud first-generation Afro-Latina, born of immigrant parents of the Dominican Republic. And that's the first part of my identity. I am also the Vice President of Audience Strategy at AARP in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Never let your job define you. My ancestors came from Cameroon, from Congo, from Western Bantu peoples, from Nigeria, from Spain, from Portugal, from Senegal, and from Mali, among others. And they journeyed, when people say, "Tú eres dominicana," but they journeyed through Cuba, Puerto Rico, through the Dominican Republic. So it's important to know our stories. Monica Trascende said today when she spoke that we have to know our stories. It's important. So being born of the daughter of immigrants, the first to graduate in New York City from Baruch College, I feel a responsibility to really excel and make mi familia and my ancestors proud. And I love this quote that I hear a lot of people say, I am my ancestors' wildest dream. Because I was given the opportunity to achieve the American dream because of my parents' struggles, my mama, mis tías, as immigrants in the United States that worked really, really hard to get their kids the education that they needed to get somewhere. So being an Afro-Latina allows me to see these things from an intersectional view of the Black world, of the Latina world, and then through this lens, I face the same struggles as Black people and dark-skinned Latinos, but you know what? That is my superpower.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you all. You know, when we were preparing for this panel, one of you, and you might remind me who exactly was, said, you know, I always heard from my mother and from my grandmother, work hard, be honest, and you get what you want. But we all know that's not the case, and that's just simply not true. It's not how it works. So how can we be better allies for other Latinos? Can you talk a little bit about some practical strategies that you apply and some successful examples and initiatives? I think Claudia.
Yeah, I'm going to take that one. So creating a great place to work is founded on inclusion. And that means every single person who walks through the doors needs to feel 100% themselves. That's the only way, number one, that you succeed as a firm and as a company. Because in those environments of inclusion, that's when you feel your full self and you can express your ideas and you can raise your questions and you don't have the hesitations, right? And the diversity of thought is what strengthens us. So I want to start there. At Bank of America, we have all kinds of tools and guides, and D&I is front and center. And so I have 4 key areas that I just want to mention to all of you to be thinking about as you become an ally. Because I think allyship is really the action word for standing by each other and standing up for each other, right? And making sure that those voices are heard. So the first one is listen. And what is listening? Listening is understand the current environment. It's asking people how they're feeling. It's listening 100%, uninterrupted. You know, totally focused on the individual. And in that listening, you will learn. You will both learn. And in learning, it creates some of the benefits, right, that we have of our own bias. Because that's another piece that you need to be mindful of. Is what are the bias that you have, and what are you bringing to the table? And are you treating everybody that you work with, all your clients, are you letting them all have the same voice? Are you listening and valuing their voice the same? So that's the second one. Lead from the front, right? So don't be afraid to open a conversation and have diversity and inclusion conversations with your colleagues, with your friends, and have that courage to have those conversations. And discourage conversations that are exclusive, right? I mean, how many times growing through my career did I hear negative comments about women, for example, and I just smiled. I don't smile anymore. And then the last piece is make it personal. And what that means is, we've talked about this a lot in the last 2 days, is share your stories, share your perspectives. In doing so, I remember being on a panel. When I first, became a senior vice president, I was on this panel, and I opened up by saying that I was Latina. And I got so many emails from people in the audience saying, you made me so proud because I'm Latina, right? So by telling your story, you're inspiring somebody else. And that then allows them to feel confident in sharing their story. And only in that listening and that understanding can we teach each other and create a more inclusive world.
Thank you so much. I think that's great, and it brings me to my next point, which is mentorship, right? When we think about how can we be an allies, how important is it for us to be mentors and to be sponsors of other Latinos, and what success stories are there, Carolina?
Yes, and I love the framework that you have, Claudia, so I may reach out to you as well. So in Young Brands, we are also galvanizing the organization around allyship, and we are defining it as allyship is empathy in action. And really, there's an imbalance in opportunities at the workplace, and what we want is for people to be able to see them, to listen, see them, and act, take action, correct them. So we partner with, she has a book, Melinda Brianna. Like, if you are interested in allyship, I highly recommend that book. And 3 things that we found out that people want from allies is trust me, give me courage, and we usually say to people, you just have to have courage. When you think about allyship, is how you can encourage others. How can you give others confidence? And then the third one is mentor me. So mentorship is a way that you can be an ally, but it's in the way of how you can equip and help someone progress in their career. So the way that we are going about is, as I said, we are galvanizing the organization around allyship first. For 2 years, we have been focusing on that, and we are measuring it. So we know that we are making progress. And now that we have built that muscle on really listening, learning, acting, we are launching a mentorship ecosystem. So really what we are seeing in the few pilots that we are running is mentors and mentees have the language and are ready to have the conversation that they need to have. So we are partnering with an organization called 10KC, 10,000 Coffees. Reach out to them as well. Great organization. And so that's what we are doing in terms of allyship, mentorship. And the last one, that is sponsorship. I firmly believe that once that we have achieved and galvanized the organization around allyship and mentorship, we are cultivating sponsors. So sponsors are going to come up, and really they are going to get to know the people, understands what they need, and it's not anymore like the question about, do you have a sponsor program? We are going to cultivate, and they're going to appear. If you want to work on allyship, I am, as you can see, delighted and I'm very excited about the topic, so please reach out.
Thank you. I think in the beginning of this conversation, Yvette, you brought something that was really important, and you brought that intersecting identity that you identify with. You're a Latino, you're, African American, or, African Latino. That's how you said it, right? So I can put it correctly. So tell me a little bit, how can we break silos? How can we be better allies to Latinos with intersecting identities?
I love that question. Well, first we need to understand them, and I think the purpose of us being here today is to really understand the importance of the data. I've heard it here, I've heard it in other places. Knowledge is power. We need to learn from everyone with multiple identities, and then we need to address their wants and needs. And no one here can leave this room, leave these 2 days without knowing how to do it, where to get the tools. Claudia and the team have laid it out. We've heard from Nielsen. We've heard from Stacy de Armas. We've heard from so many people here. And I feel it's very, very important for us to really understand them. We need to speak. Our voices are so powerful. We need to ask questions respectfully. We need to really understand folks. We need not to be offensive. We need to call out the microaggressions because they're not okay. We should not be in uncomfortable situations without raising your hand and saying something. Because sometimes a statement can make us the butt of jokes, and we're nobody's joke. We should not be ridiculed for our accents or because we are Latinas and we're stereotyped, right? With the unfortunate situation of George Floyd, I recall how all Afro-Latinos came out to speak on our similar discriminatory situations. I see Sid right here, who's one of our big leaders, who was out there speaking. Dr. Juan Andrade had a panel on it at USHLI that I was proud to be on with Sid, because it's important. I mean, the way we really arm ourselves is by speaking and giving information. Claudia always talks about unity. And we heard Maria Cuba talked about, similarities are our strengths. So we have to build on it because our identities are very different, and our differences can make us stronger. In the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at AARP, we work on cross-audience projects. Our Chief Diversity Officer is really proud, and she pushes us to not be siloed and do something just for Hispanic, for Black, for LGBTQ, for people with disabilities. So we have an intersectional approach. We have these awesome video series where we just did one with Asians and Latinos. How many of you have eaten at a Chino Cubano restaurant, especially in New York? That is culture, that is cultura, so we have to support each other and not, not bash each other. And, there's a lot of people that are, intersectional. For example, Lupita Nyong'o, right? Mexican and Kenyan. Ana Gabriel, do you all know that she has Chinese heritage from her abuelo, maternal abuelo? Bruno Mars, half Filipino, half Puerto Rican. So these are people breaking barriers, breaking down glass ceilings, and paving the way for all of us. So we need to follow those examples and use our voices, which to me is our superpower.
Thank you, Yvette. Thank you so much. And the last thing I really want to get to is giving back. That's something that we all talk about. We talk about work, but how can we give back to our communities? How can organizations and policymakers and you as an individual give back to your community? Rolando.
Yeah, I think, that's what it's all about, right? Giving back. I think it's safe to say that everyone in this room is represents a unique success story. But I'd also be willing to bet that everyone here has had some help along the way. I know I did, whether it's from a family member, a teacher, maybe a mentor if you're lucky. But the reality is that not everybody has access to that, and that's unacceptable, right? I think that giving back isn't a privilege, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that we all have to bear, and that it's not about feeling good about ourselves because we were able to successfully pitch a sponsorship of an organization or donate money to this or volunteer for that. It's a lifelong commitment, and for me personally, my focus is in Texas. That's where our largest market is. That's where I live. And, we've talked a lot about, statistics and data, but, most of you, I'm sure, know Texas is now a minority state. 40% of the population is Hispanic. It's the largest it's the largest segment of the population. And drilling down a little bit, right, in about 5 years, in the next 5 years, about 2 million Gen Zers in Texas will be entering adulthood, and half of them will be Hispanic. And so we think about, how important it is for these kids to get to that stage in their lives well prepared. We talked a lot about education, and we've made a lot of strides in education, and that's fantastic, but it's not just about education, right? I think we all know that, as a community, we still struggle with having adequate health care, access to housing, for all the growth and spending power that we have, we still struggle to build, foundational wealth in our families, and that's critical to advancement. So the reality is there's a lot of need out there in our communities, but the good news is that's a lot of opportunity for us to chip in and help, right? So I think that when we think about, to your question, I'm sorry, how do you address it? There's a couple different things, right? The first one is commitment, and when I talk about commitment, there's a quote that I love, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember it word for word from Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King. It says, "You don't have to see the whole ladder to take the first step," and you can commit, and you can commit long term without having it all figured out. So I think that that's critical. Creating education and awareness, continuing the conversation is important, as well as amplification. And then action, of course. It doesn't have to be widespread, right? We can focus on key things that we feel like we can make an impact and not try to spread ourselves too thin. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there. As an organization, I think we all kind of have that responsibility again to make sure that our communities, move ahead.
Thank you. I think we could all talk forever about allyship and, how to help each other. And I think one of the things that I've learned from my own experience being a journalist, as someone who's lived more than half my life outside Brazil, where I'm from, and spending my days writing in a language that isn't mine, is that we could all use an ally.